Welcome to another deep dive. We got this article from Social Work Journal, and it's really got my wheels turning. The Ethic of Care, Recapturing Social Work's First Voice. Pretty interesting title, right?
Yeah, it really makes you think.
Definitely. We're going to unpack how care in social work isn't just about being, a nice person.
Right.
There's a whole philosophical framework behind it. So I'm really excited to dig into this with you today. To get us started, can you set the stage for us a bit? Like, what's the traditional view of care versus expertise in social work?
Well, what's interesting is how social work in the 20th century really leaned heavily on, a scientific approach.
Okay, so like study, diagnose, treat.
Exactly, yeah. And expertise basically meant applying that knowledge in the right way.
Got it. So it's kind of like evidence-based practice, right?
Exactly.
Like if you think about a doctor using the latest medical research to decide on a treatment plan.
Right.
But where does actual care fit into that picture?
Well, that's where things get a little, I guess you could say, tricky. If you think about it, applying scientific knowledge can sometimes feel a little impersonal.
Yeah, for sure.
Even dehumanizing in a way. You risk treating the client as a category.
Right.
Not as a unique individual. And so care, recognizing the client's individuality, respecting their dignity, it was kind of seen as a way to, soften that scientific approach.
I see.
To kind of humanize it a bit.
To balance it out.
Exactly.
So it's like a balancing act.
It was this balancing act, yeah. Almost like a yin-yang, between that clinical side and then the human connection side.
It's like that bureaucrat with a heart idea from the article.
Yes,
trying to find that balance between clinical detachment, but also bringing in that human connection.
Precisely. And that's a really good way to sum up that traditional, what we call modernist view of care in social work.
Okay, so that's the modernist view. But the article also talks about a postmodern shift in thinking, right?
Right.
So how did that change the landscape of care and expertise?
Well, postmodern social work practices, things like, strengths-based or narrative therapy, they take a completely different approach to expertise. They see the social worker's expertise as being in critical consciousness.
Okay.
So helping clients understand and kind of reshape their own narratives.
So less about giving them the answer and more about helping them find their own answer.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
And this shift really puts a bigger emphasis on the client's unique identity and their lived experiences.
So care plays a much more active role then.
Yeah, it's not just a counterbalance to a cold clinical approach anymore. In the postmodern view, care actually becomes part of constructing a new reality for the client.
Interesting.
It's about validating their experiences and helping to solidify that new empowering narrative that they're building.
So in this view, even something like saying to a client, I see and value you as this individual, that could actually be a really powerful tool for change.
Absolutely. It affirms their unique identity and gives their new narrative, legitimacy. It's about acknowledging them as a person, not just a case file. But this shift towards the client's narrative, it also brings up some really challenging questions about professional boundaries.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting to me. Traditionally, dual relationships were a huge no-no in social work, right?
Yeah, right.
Because the thinking was that too much care, too much blurring of the lines could actually compromise the therapeutic process.
Exactly, yeah.
But then this article kind of throws a curveball, doesn't it?
It does.
It suggests that in a postmodern context, genuine care and even friendship can actually strengthen the helping process.
Right. It becomes part of that collaborative, construction of a new reality.
So it's not about erasing boundaries entirely, but rethinking what those boundaries should be.
Yeah, it's about finding that sweet spot where authenticity and genuineness can exist within the helping relationship. What stands out to you in all of this? What's the biggest aha moment for you so far?
I think what's really striking is how the very definition of expertise in social work can change so drastically.
Yeah.
Depending on which philosophical lens you're using. It's not a fixed concept. It's evolving as our understanding of what it means to care evolves.
And that evolution has, massive implications for how care is viewed and expressed.
Absolutely.
It's not just about being a nice person. It's about understanding power dynamics, respecting individual narratives, and recognizing the potential for genuine connection, even within those professional boundaries.
Exactly. And that's, just the tip of the iceberg. The article also dives into this really fascinating concept called the linguistic turn in postmodern thought.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. What is the linguistic turn, and how does it relate to care in social work?
Well, it's all about recognizing the power of language.
Yeah. In shaping our experiences and even our reality.
That makes
We use language to, make sense of the world, to tell our stories, to define who we are.
So in this context, like the words that we use with clients, they carry even more weight than we might realize.
Exactly.
They're not just conveying information, they're actually shaping the client's understanding of themselves and their situation.
Precisely. And that brings us to the idea of called narrative identity.
Okay.
Which is really the heart of this postmodern approach.
Narrative identity. Tell me more. How does that actually play out in social work practice?
Well, it's the idea that our sense of self is constructed through the stories we tell ourselves and others.
Right. Right.
Our experiences, our relationships, our successes and failures, it all kind of contributes to this ongoing narrative that shapes how we see ourselves and the world around us.
So if a client comes in with a negative self-narrative,
right,
it can almost become like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Like they're trapped in this story they can't escape.
Yeah, and that's where the social worker's expertise in, critical consciousness comes in. By helping clients understand how their narratives have been shaped, they can start to challenge those limiting beliefs and create new, more empowering stories.
So how would a social worker actually use this approach in practice?
Well, the article breaks it down into three key stages.
Okay.
Confront, generate, and solidify.
Okay, let's break those down.
Yeah.
What does it mean to confront a client's narrative?
So in the confront stage, you're helping the client become aware of that dominant narrative that's causing them distress.
Right.
This might involve challenging negative self-perceptions or limiting beliefs that are kind of holding them back.
So you're gently bringing those hidden stories to the surface.
Exactly.
And helping them see how they might be influencing their thoughts, their feelings, their behaviors.
Right. You're raising their awareness. And then you move into the generate phase, where you work collaboratively with the client to explore those alternative narratives.
I see.
This might involve, identifying their strengths, reframing past experiences in a more empowering light.
Okay.
Or even envisioning new possibilities for the future.
So instead of focusing on what's wrong, you're looking for what's right.
Exactly.
And then building on those strengths and positive aspects. It's almost like you're like a co-author.
Yeah.
Helping them write a new chapter in their life story.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Okay.
And remember, in this approach, the client is always the expert on their own experience. The social worker's role is to facilitate this process of discovery and co-creation, not to dictate the new narrative.
Right.
It's about empowerment, not imposition.
Got it. So then what about the final stage, solidify?
Yeah.
How do you help a client make those new narratives stick?
Well, in the solidify stage, you're helping the client integrate that new narrative into their life.
Well,
this might involve, connecting them with supportive relationships, helping them develop coping skills to deal with challenges, or even advocating for systemic changes that support their growth and well-being.
So the expression of care kind of extends beyond just the therapy room.
Yeah, it's about creating a supportive environment where the client can thrive.
This framework is really making me rethink how I approach care,
Yeah.
in my own interactions,
Yeah.
Both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
But I got to admit, I'm still a little stuck on this idea of dual relationships. It seems like a really slippery slope, how can a social worker be both a professional and a friend to a client without blurring those lines?
Yeah, no, that's a really important question and one that's been hotly debated within the field. The traditional view, which is really rooted in that modernist scientific model,
Right.
really emphasizes strict professional boundaries to protect the client and avoid any potential harm.
Right, because it's about maintaining that professional distance.
Right.
To prevent, any exploitation of the power dynamic or, situations where the client might feel obligated or dependent.
Exactly. Yeah. But the article challenges us to consider whether, in some cases, a more authentic, a more reciprocal relationship
Right.
might actually enhance the therapeutic process,
Yeah.
especially within this postmodern framework
Right.
where the relationship itself is seen as a tool for change.
So it's about finding that balance between professional responsibility, but also that genuine human connection.
Yeah, and recognizing that the right answer might look different, you
Right.
know, depending on the client, the context, and the therapeutic goals. It's definitely a lot to think about.
It is. It is. It really speaks to the need for ongoing reflection,
Right.
ethical awareness and a commitment to ongoing professional development. Social work isn't about blindly following rules. It's about navigating these complex situations with compassion
Absolutely.
and a deep understanding of the potential impact of our actions.
Yeah.
This deep dive has really, really opened my eyes to those complexities. What are your biggest takeaways so far?
Well, I think what strikes me the most is how these different models of care and expertise, they can actually coexist.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about having this diverse toolbox of approaches that we can tailor to each client's unique needs and circumstances.
It's about being adaptable,
Right.
responsive, always putting the client's well-being at the forefront.
Exactly. And I think it highlights the importance of self-awareness. You know, for social workers,
Right.
we need to understand our own values, our own biases,
Right.
our own theoretical leanings,
Yeah.
so that we can make informed choices about which, approaches will be most effective and ethical in each situation.
That's a powerful message. What do you think is the most important thing for our listener to take away from this conversation?
Well, I think the most valuable takeaway is the invitation to reflect on how these different philosophical perspectives on care kind of show up in their own lives.
Right.
Not just in their professional work if they happen to be in the social work field,
Yeah.
but also in their personal relationships,
Right.
How do they express care? How do they receive care?
Right.
And how might a deeper understanding of these concepts actually influence their interactions with others? Yeah, that's a great point. It's about taking these abstract ideas and making them relevant to our everyday lives. Because, ultimately, whether we're social workers or not, we all engage in acts of care.
Right.
And understanding the different ways we can approach care can make us, more effective, more compassionate,
Yeah.
and more connected individuals.
Beautifully said. But you know what? The article goes even further. It challenges this long-held belief that social workers should strive for neutrality.
That's right. It suggests that true care sometimes actually requires taking a stand, advocating for what's right,
Right.
even challenging systems of oppression that perpetuate injustice. It's a bold statement, but I think it aligns with the core values of social work.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that neutrality can sometimes be a form of complicity. And if we genuinely care about our clients' well-being, we can't just sit on the sidelines. We need to be, actively working towards creating a more just and equitable society.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the historical roots of social work. The article mentioned the charity organization society and the settlement house movement.
Yeah.
Do you remember how they viewed care and expertise?
I do. Those early pioneers of social work, they really placed a huge emphasis on building personal relationships,
Yeah.
with people they served. Think about those friendly visitors going into people's homes, offering support and guidance, or the settlement house workers living right alongside the communities they were working with.
Yeah.
It was all about a hands-on approach,
Building trust,
Yeah.
offering practical assistance. And it was also about empowering people to advocate for themselves.
Right.
And for social change, and in many ways, this postmodern shift we've been discussing is really like a return to those core values of social work, but with a more nuanced understanding of power dynamics, identity, and social construction.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening.
It has. Yeah.
It's clear that the role of care in social work is so much more than just being kind.
Right.
It's about being, competent, compassionate, courageous, and constantly evolving our understanding of what it means to truly, truly care for others.
Well said. And it's about recognizing that care is not a static concept. It's something that we need to constantly reflect on,
Right.
to refine, and to reimagine as we grow both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. So for you listening, here's something to ponder as you go about your day.
Yeah.
What does care look like in your own professional and personal life? Does it lean more toward that modernist um, yin yang balance,
Yep.
or are you drawn to a more postmodern collaborative approach?
Right.
And how might you use these insights to strengthen your relationships
Yeah.
and to create positive change in your own corner of the world? These are questions worth asking, and we hope this deep dive has given you some new tools and perspectives to help you find your own answers.
Until next time.
Wow, it's really amazing to see how these ideas connect back to the historical roots of social work. It's like we've come full circle in a way.
Yeah, it really does feel that way. That emphasis on personal connection, on meeting people where they are, it's timeless. And yet, we're also integrating these new layers of understanding about power, identity, and the social construction of reality. It's like we're building on that foundation that was laid by those early pioneers, but with a more nuanced and sophisticated approach.
I love that analogy, building on the foundation.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is like the most significant takeaway for our listener? Like, what's the one idea you really hope they'll walk away with?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that care is multifaceted. It's not just about being nice or providing, basic needs. It's about understanding the individual, respecting their narrative,
Right.
empowering them to create change, and advocating for social justice. And it requires us, as individuals and as a society, to constantly reflect on our own beliefs and actions, to challenge the status quo and to strive for a world where everyone has the opportunity to live a fulfilling and meaningful life.
Beautifully said. This deep dive has been a real journey, hasn't it?
It really has.
We explore the historical context, unpack different philosophical perspectives. We even challenge some of our own assumptions about what it means to care.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. These conversations always leave me feeling so energized
Me too.
and inspired. There's so much we can learn from each other and so much potential for growth and positive change.
Absolutely. So to you listening, we hope this deep dive has sparked some new ideas and insights for you as well. Whether you work in the social work field or not, the concepts we've discussed today, they apply to all of us. How do you express care in your own life? How do you receive care? And how might a deeper understanding of these concepts empower you to create positive change in your own corner of the world? Take these questions with you and keep exploring. Until next time.